narcissism is a sickness, okay? If you're on the spectrum, if you have a personality disorder and you're on that spectrum, right, where you are clinically a narcissist, it is an illness. It is a word, however, that everybody's picked up on and they bandy it like it's candy.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to do something that somebody else doesn't want you to do, you are suddenly selfish and you're a narcissist. If you want to live your life on one pathway and somebody wants to pull you on another, or you're not doing what they want you to do, then you're a narcissist because you are doing what you want to do and you're not thinking of anybody else. It's like candy given out. It means nothing, because to be a narcissist is a sickness, and to accuse somebody of being in it is unkind. At its best. At its worst, it is traumatic, because somebody who is a narcissist genuinely doesn't understand what other people are thinking and feeling.
Welcome back to Talk To Ake. My name is Ake. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm so excited to have everyone here. You know, as I always say, this is a relationship between the both of us, and this space is a safe space for everyone. That's why it's called Talk To Ake, because most times I just have to listen to people share their amazing story and experiences in life. And in this podcast, it gets very inspiring. It's something that I love to say you can never get enough of, because there's no such thing as enough motivation to live this life that we live in. My guest today is a very amazing person. First met her through a friend of mine that I care about so much. Shout out to Sam Mahela, my friend from Tanzania, superstar. She's running a charity called Split Difference, and it is specifically, for some reasons, for men and boys, which I find really interesting. She's also a freelance business advisor, a business coach, and also an executive coach. Ladies and gentlemen, Salian. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Come on, Sam, come on, look at. Excited to have you here. How do you feel today?
I'm good. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you.
Of course, I've always looked forward to it, because it's almost like no one has enough time for men and boys. So having a woman that opened a charity for men and boys, it's something really, really interesting. You do freelance business advice, and also you're a business coach. Why did you decide to open a charity for men and boys? I would want to know that.
So I've got a background in designing and running procured services, government services, that goes back about 20 years. And in 2015, I was part of a consortium that won £500,000 Police and Crime Commissioner funding to create a whole family domestic abuse service centred around the children. Yeah. It sent me on research that I'd never dived into before.
Okay.
Within 12 months of that research, I realised that the UK had got it dreadfully wrong, and there was no services that were available for men and boys. And I also realised that I looked at 21 acts of law and the guidance and the policy that comes out of those acts, and how the money is spent in delivering services from them. And I realised that men and boys were not served, even though in many areas their need was greater. So I kind of got my bee in the bonnet and started looking for best practice, and I broadened that over into the rest of the world and looked at over 15 countries. So I always say over 15 because I looked at a number of African countries and a number of Arab countries, Australia, America, Canada, some European countries. And wherever I looked, it was the same story.
What's the story, if I may ask?
So the story is that there's an illusion that women don't have equality. I looked at all of and I know this is challenging.
I just call it an illusion.
It is an illusion. And you know, there are a lot of women like me now. In the last 2 years, we've seen growth in professionals wanting to look for truth and wanting to understand. In 191 countries across the world, they hold the highest suicide rates for men and boys. Some countries are 3 out of 4. The top is 6 out of 7. It was 7 out of 8, but it's now 6 out of 7 suicides. So there are major red flags saying we're not getting it right for our men and boys. Yeah. So, and it is an illusion. I stripped out the feminist ideology and the narrative within it, and I looked at all the stats and evidence within their narrative to see whether is it true. So things like women in developing countries having education. You know, we see a lot of in the media about women should have that. Well, I've looked at the stats. There are more men and boys out of education internationally than there are women and girls, even in developing countries.
These are with facts.
These are facts. They're black and white, evidenced, you know, through UN and other methods, but they are it's factual, you know. So, and wherever I looked, it was the same story. Whichever narrative I looked at, you know, women in boardrooms, women in positions of power, and I mean, there's more women in position of power now.
Do you think
there
there are more women in position of power?
There are. If we picked a number of services or a number of the industries, different industries, health, education.
Yeah.
I mean, they're women right to the very top. NHS, women, you know, education, women. Things like, you know, in politics, women are climbing very high. And even now, you know, they're even things like building, you know, women are being open, I would say they're being pushed into these kinds of environments. I know some women I love being outside. I love hands-on garden stuff. I grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
And I know some women love that kind of industry, but they're almost being guided to make those choices just because they're women and they should be able to if they want to. So there's a motivation behind that.
This is the effect of the illusion that you
This
claim.
is the effect of the illusion. So, and this stripping away of the femininity of women, and you know, and what I found was that unfortunately the narrative is not true. Okay, so if you get a narrative that's not true, why is that narrative being perpetuated then? And for me, the evidence shows that we have women stepping on women to achieve what they need to by victimizing women. And for me, I mean, I could stand in Hyde Park on a box for 3 months and not repeat myself on the evidence and data that I collected.
You just spoke about femininity, about stripping women of their femininity. I grew up in Nigeria, and it's a thing now. Feminism, it's everywhere. Everyone is about that right now. But growing up, I grew up in a country, in a society where women are meant to be looked after. Our forefathers always wanted, I'm talking about way back, hundreds of years ago, 50 years ago, our forefathers always wanted a woman to be the homemaker, to stay at home and you know, be protected and be, you know, provided for, you know. But coming into the new society now, women want to come out more, women want to get more education, which I think is not right. It's not a bad thing because everyone has the right to do whatever they want. Yep. But if you say to me right now, women are being stripped of their femininity, what do you mean by being stripped of their femininity? Are you talking about stripped off of being a woman? That means the old way it has been done, like staying back home, taking care of the family. Is that what you mean by being stripped of femininity?
Women have natural gifts, natural attributes, natural ways of being. What we are now seeing is women are more aggressive, they're more competitive, they are being told that they can do anything they want to do. And there is an internal fight on the would and should. So if you speak to some women, they're saying, but I want to stay at home. You know, we are seeing, in the last 2 years, I'm seeing a change in the narrative from women, young women. I want to be at home. I want to take care of my children. I'm happy to be a house. Why do I feel that I'm pushed into being all of that and being a professional in whatever context? And I'm not saying women shouldn't be allowed. I'm educated. I'm educated in a number of different ways. Yeah. I wouldn't change that. I brought up 4 daughters, wouldn't change that. You know, but there is a push towards you've got to be all singing, all dancing. You deny what is in you because you're told that you have to be this strong, fighting, out there, dominant woman who's charging the world and having everything she wants.
Which you call an illusion.
It is an illusion.
Okay.
So for me, and talking to other women, there is an enlightenment coming. You know, we've seen the last 2 years, major difference in the narrative. I was almost a standalone wolf. You know, I was the one that was saying, Sally, what are you doing? You're a woman. Why have you got this narrative and you're supporting men and boys? But now there's a lot of women like me. that want equity, you know. Equality is a bit of a grey areaed word, and it's not really achievable.
Yeah.
But equity is, you know, and I would never want somebody to have their choices taken away from them, not man nor woman. Currently in the world, in every single country, it is men who are having their choices removed. If they dare to have a voice, they hear in toxic masculinity. You're lots of things. And though all of those terms are designed to silence men. They're designed to hit men right at the core where it says, oh, I'm already predispositioned to look after all the women in my family. I've already got a psyche that wants to put, you know, and I know this is a general statement, but generally men do take that masculine road. They do stand out first in the road, you know. And you've got men now that are frightened to say anything.
Yeah.
I've spoken to male psychologists. They'll sit in a room full of women because the NHS is there's more women in leadership in the NHS, and psychologists will say to me, Sally, if I'm in a room of psychologists, and this is a psychologist who was top of his field in an NHS hospital, and he says to me, I cannot, if I put an idea forward, and I've tested this, my idea will be that everybody around the room will strip that down, strip that voice down, down. If somebody else does the same idea and it's a woman, it's elevated.
Yeah.
So we call it an unconscious and a conscious bias.
Yeah.
So there's an unconscious bias from the years and decades of women's voices and needs being pushed right forward. And then you've got this conscious bias where you've got some in leadership that are actively trying to silence the men in their profession.
And these have like great effects on the mental health and state of men, because we already go through a lot of trauma. Men growing up, we've always been take, for example, I'm coming from an African perspective, you have a male child and a female child. If a male child runs down and falls down on the ground, you hear stuff like, oh, come on, get up, you're a man, come on, move on. And if a woman falls down, it's almost like, oh, come on, my baby, get up. And you see that there's quite a difference. And we grew up like that, being tough, being that masculine, having a masculine nature. And then growing up to full adulthood, you now start hearing things like, oh, men are supposed to cry, men are supposed to be vulnerable, things that we're not very used to growing up. Now, it's almost very traumatic for us because it's almost like a switch. You're turning off you have to be a man now. You don't have to cry. And now you're calling us toxic for not being open and vulnerable. Do you see how much of an effect that can play in a man's life?
Well, I mean, okay, so I stripped that apart. I've got qualifications as a psychotherapist and a life coach and a restorative practitioner. So I stripped that down. And then one of the things I asked myself is, why are women asking men to cry? Now, what's the purpose of that? Men are, whatever their upbringing around resilience, men are very resilient. They're brought up to be resilient, okay? It's part of their nature. There's nature versus a nurture, but they are resilient. They tend to be resilient, okay? So I'm saying to myself, why suddenly are men being encouraged to cry? Well, for me, that I'm asking myself, is that to weaken the masculinity that is already present in these men? Because I can only think that that's the only purpose. Because I'm as a woman, and I think probably I can count him on one hand how many times I've cried in public. If anybody said to me, you can cry, I'm like, mind your own business. That's very personal to me. If I'm upset, I'm self-contained, I'm autonomous, I'm quite regulated. So why is this push, you can cry? Some women may think, because they're being led to believe that by doing that, you're actually giving men permission to be vulnerable, so it's a good thing, you know. This is where toxic masculinity comes from, because they don't let out their feelings, their emotions. But as a man, that's your choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's your choice. And just because you don't doesn't mean that you're toxic, does it? It just means that you're self-regulated, that you choose not to be that. Why? So for me, it's about stripping down the male identity. Yeah. It's about removing this vision of power and weakening that masculinity, because that's the only thing I can come up with. And I have looked at this.
Do you see a future where it's going to get worse than this, and men are just going to shut up and just let women rule the world and do everything?
Well, I mean, I have been known to say to guys, listen, you need to learn how to drop the mic, because if you can't speak up and hold your frame and strengthen your identity to say, listen, you know, if I threw at you now, you're behaving like a toxic man, right? Now, I would want you to say to me, just 1 second, ask me what I'm thinking, you know? And I say to you, okay, so why did you make that statement? And you say to me, well, actually, I'm thinking A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is my thoughts. I don't want harm for anybody. I am going to own those thoughts. And you're wrong in your perception that I'm a toxic male.
Yeah.
And then you drop the mic and walk away. And I tell men all the time, you have to own your identity, because if you don't, your resilience as a man is needed. You know, honestly, men and women are beautiful.
Yeah.
We have beautiful assets in us, you know. The way we're made is different. We fit together. When we work together well, we fit together. And to strip you down for my femininity to thrive, or my wants or needs to thrive, you need to say no. You guys need to learn how to say, actually, you're wrong. I don't own what you're putting on me. That is not my intention. That's not what I meant when I said that. This is what I meant, like it or not. Jordan Peterson is very good at that. If you don't know Jordan Peterson.
I know Jordan Peterson.
So Jordan Peterson is very good at that. He holds the frame. And he uses logic. He's very educated. He knows his stuff.
Women, I'm not trying to have a go at women, but it's harder for women to understand logic. You know,
well,
it's more of emotions.
Well, our brains work differently.
Yeah.
You know, women are emotional thinkers.
Yeah.
Men are more, their brains are more streamlined. They keep things in boxes. So if I said to you, if I'm talking to you now about cars and gardens, and then all of a sudden I say, actually, I want to talk to you about why we argued last week. You're like, excuse me, hang on a second. You're jumping from one thing to another. It's because of the way your brain functions. Your brain functions. It's why men make good scientists generally, or mathematicians, or they're very good at taking that minute detail and really honing in and focusing on that.
Yeah.
Because of the way you're made. Now, for women, we're more, I think about everything at once.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about how you are, how he is, how the table is,
That's
what's
a lot
going
of
on.
work.
It's constant and it's natural to me. But match those things together, you need understanding. So, yes, you know, it's not easy. I understand that. I kind of get that. But we have to appreciate and respect each other and what each other brings, you know.
What are the factors that affect these things? Like, do you want to say social media? Do you want to say exposure to a lot of information? What are the factors that make these things come alive? I'm talking about women stripping men of their masculinity, and women trying so hard to, just like you said, live in that illusion, because there's so many information. If you pop up Instagram and you scroll and you're searching, you're watching things, you're watching videos, you're watching clips of loads of podcasts and stuff encouraging these things you're complaining about, and no one is looking out for the men. I saw a video of a man crying the other day on a podcast, and he says, women are our problem. He was really emotional. This is what he said: women are our problem. They make us very vulnerable to them, and they use our vulnerability against us. And that would put someone in a very dark and low self-esteem place. And that's why you talk about suicide. And that's why I'm not even arguing, because so many men, we talk to ourselves, and when these things happen, because you're vulnerable to someone and you trust someone so much, you believe anything they say. Do you know what I mean? If you make me cry and be vulnerable to you, and you give me your arms and I lay on your arms, I would trust you, because that's logic to a man's head. Like, this person really cares about me. So whatever this person says to me is the absolute truth. Do you know what I mean? And then when there's a problem and maybe I make a mistake or something, you use my vulnerability against me. And then it becomes a very suicidal place, and you just want to end your life because you're being stripped down of ego. And a lot of people do not understand this. And men are hiding. And that's why when you say stuff like, no one is looking out for men and boys, and this is what you're doing, I'm like, yeah, it's something to talk about. It's something to learn more about. Is this what you're looking out for when you take in men and give them this advice? These are the things you look out for?
So part of what I do is we're trying to campaign. So my research showed that there is a powerhouse to the extreme feminist ideology, because that is what it is. So it has a power source within the UN. And that power source has threaded itself through every single service, every piece of legislation in every single country that's a member of the UN. So I have a political drive to raise awareness about that power source.
Yeah.
So that's one area that we work in. And then the second part is that I want to raise awareness. I think men are their own worst enemies on time because they have bought into the perception that women have of them. Men know their power, and men know that they can, they can see the world, especially when they're younger, they see the world in a different way. They look at life in a different way. And I think men have grown up in blame and shame. So for a man, even from a childhood, we've got in the school, we know in schools, for example, children, boys and girls who do things wrong, boys have tougher treatment when they misbehave than girls do.
Even in the prison, right?
Even in prison. So in prisons, we've got 13 areas. In a prison, if you and I had committed the same crime, say we were drug dealing, as an example, right? You and I used to be a drug worker, so it's a prime example for me.
Yeah.
So if you and I were committing the same crime, I could be arrested maybe 10 times, okay? You could be arrested 10 times. But I would not have any penal measures taken against me, just warnings. But you may get to 3 or 4 and you've already got, some form of tagging or something on you. And when you do go to prison or you do have that, even if I reach the 10th arrest and I've been tagged, you will spend longer on that tag than I will spend on that tag. If you and I end up in prison for what we're doing, you will spend longer in prison than I will.
Is that not what equity is all about?
Well, this is where the bias is. This is where the gender bias is. This is, you talk about societal narrative. So for 4 years, I looked at governance. It was all about services and law and legislation and fiscal management and who's pushing this agenda across the world. I looked at the committees in the UN. I looked at this it's the Istanbul Convention. I really dived into the Istanbul Convention. I looked at the UN Women. I looked at leadership of women across the world and how they're networked. But the last year I looked at societal narrative. So I looked at things like music, gaming, hair and beauty. I looked at all of the types of kind of subculture influencing narratives that come from young, 13 plus year olds, and what governs their narrative. And everywhere that I looked, I saw a feminist ideology bleeding into those narratives, even in the gaming industry, which, it's crazy to think of these things. So the influences on young boys and the influences on young women start at a very, very early age.
Yeah.
And so to go back to why I do what I'm doing, part of it is to challenge the governance side of things. So I want a UN men. Okay, I want a UN men. And to me, there's no justifiable reason why we haven't got a UN men, even if the only reason was because of the suicides, right? It's a major, major flag. Yeah. We've got all these, the youngest documented case is 6 years old, right? 6 years old in a boy. Wow. This is beyond belief,
Yeah.
So for me, I want a UN men. Because I think if we put equity in the voice, if we give place for a voice for men and a place for a voice for women, we then have a balanced society. Because what's happened with the UN Women and the Istanbul Convention, it's threaded an agenda of protecting women and girls right the way throughout every single policy, even business. It's even situated in areas where you wouldn't think it was situated. So it's a violence against women and girls. Men don't have that voice, even locally being England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Spain, France, Germany, they don't have the same arena where they can step in and say, well, actually, we need to look at this.
Yeah.
They don't have that. So part is I want to look at governance. We are pushing for that. We're trying our best to do that. The other part is to raise awareness with men and boys, For me, I want to raise confidence. I want to say to men, you cannot allow yourself to buy into the identity that's being forced upon you.
Yeah.
And you cannot allow yourself to be silenced. And I don't mean about suddenly becoming these strong, I'm not listening to anyone. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about challenging the narrative at the level that you're situated with. If you hear a bunch of girls saying, la, 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 all these men and toxic men, bad behavior.
You're narcissistic.
You just do all
not.
of this, it's just jumping on the bandwagon. It's just girls together. It means nothing if you ask them where their heart is. It's just this, you know. But if you've got a man who's faced with that, because he's in a female group of friends at the moment, just say, actually, I'm a guy and that's not the way I think.
I want to ask you a very controversial question because it's now a thing. I know you would have more idea about this because of experience and everything. It's about narcissism, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask the question.
That's okay.
I believe there's a data for it that it's almost like 1% of the world population that has that disorder because it's a mental disorder. I want to understand why it's so easy and why it's very or more likely for men to be narcissists. Out of the 1% in the world, it's more likely for men to be called narcissist or to be narcissist. I want to understand who a full narcissist is and how men should react when they're being called that, even if they're not, or even if they just show signs or traits. How do we handle that? Because trust me, it's almost like a, how do I put it? Like a time bomb. It's so easy for you to be called that. And because men don't want to believe that they are narcissists, they want to believe that they are men. And sometimes it's just easy for them to speak out. How do you differentiate yourself from being a man and being a narcissist? How do you know that difference? And you just spoke about, when you hear stuff like that, you should speak out, you should own your ground. And then because of the way the society is, men are walking on eggshells not to become that person that a woman would tag you as. You know, it could be toxic, manipulative, narcissistic. How do you put yourself together and find out all of this?
So the narcissism is a sickness. Okay, if you're on the spectrum, if you have a personality disorder and you're on that spectrum, right, where you are clinically a narcissist, it is an illness. It is a word, however, that everybody's picked up on and they bandy it like it's candy. Yeah. Okay, so if you want to do something that somebody else doesn't want you to do, you are suddenly selfish and you're a narcissist. If you want to live your life on one pathway and somebody wants to pull you on another, or you're not doing what they want you to do, then you're a narcissist because you are doing what you want to do and you're not thinking of anybody else. It's like candy given out. It means nothing because to be a narcissist is a sickness, and to accuse somebody of being in it, it is unkind. At its best, at its worst, it is traumatic because somebody who is a narcissist genuinely doesn't understand what other people are thinking and feeling. Okay, they genuinely do not understand. How do I know what that person's feeling? They cannot relate to it. So it's a sickness. It's like being, I don't like these terms. I can't stand fitting people in boxes. But, the autism and this thing around all these words that are disabling people from their own identity or who they are, or celebrating what they can do just because they are that person. So it is a word that really is disrespectful. And I think it should be treated that way, okay? The way to deal with narcissism is you're an individual. You have your own heart, you have your own dreams, you have your own thoughts. I do this thing with guys and I say, set your default settings, okay? If you want to show who you are, your best version of yourself, just think about your default settings on how to deal with this. So for example, if somebody calls you a narcissist because you purely do not want to do what they want to do, okay? Or you're willing to say, okay, I get it. If you think I'm being selfish, I understand, but I have my own hopes and dreams and I want to do this. And if you don't agree with me, I'm sorry. But if you set a default setting that's no more than, I would say, about 15 words, and you only ever use that default setting when somebody makes you feel that way, because they are wrong in doing it. They're wrong in using that word, because if you are a narcissist, it's not your fault. You understand? Narcissism comes from trauma. It comes from your physiology. It is something that's built in you, okay? Yeah. A lot of the time it's trauma.
Yeah.
People pin these things on ADHD and lots of other things, clinical terms on somebody, and actually they come from trauma. Okay? So creating these default settings, you know, if you're in a setting that somebody loves, you're working with somebody who loves to use this thing about toxic male, toxic male, toxic male. If she brings that to you all of the time and she only ever gets the same 10 words off you, eventually she will stop. Because she knows that's all she's going to get from you. She's not going to get any other response from you. This goes for the ladies.
Yeah.
You know, it goes for everybody who's living with somebody that is using that term to control them. If you use the same set of 6 to 10 words on somebody every time they use it, they will stop. It's a form of bullying. So, but you need to celebrate your identity. You need to know who you are and accept who you are. And regardless of what anybody says about you or who you are, you need to own who you are. And if you want to make a decision that is about what you need and want, then you just say, look, I'm really sorry, but on this occasion, that's what I want to do. That's what I've been working for. That's what I dream for. That's what I want to do. And if you don't buy into that, I'm really sorry. You know, that's it.
It's...
Well, men, I promote professional courage, right?
Yeah.
Because over the last 2 years, we've seen such a growth in professionals who are saying, hang on, ladies. And it's ladies. We've got ladies saying, excuse me, this is wrong. You know, the evidence is saying something else. I'm not buying into that. Some of them don't quite get it. So they're still working on that premise that I'm going to look after this man now. So I'm going to make him all soft and feel comfortable. They're not getting that they should look at who this man is in front of them and celebrate who he is. Or if you want to challenge something he's doing wrong, then do it in a good way. Don't be calling him toxic, you know. Challenge in a positive way. Be a critical friend to that person, okay, if you're in that relationship. But men need to hold their space because you are allowing these women to behave the way they are. And you're not doing them any favors. It is... what I've noticed is there is part of the psyche where entitlement sits. So when you feel you're entitled to something,
True.
Okay, that powers you to behave often in the worst version of yourself.
True.
You know, and that's what's happening to women who are following this ideology. They feel entitled. I'm entitled to that job. I'm entitled to that education. I'm entitled to demand that that man pays £60 a head for a meal instead of taking me to somewhere that pays £15 a head. I'm entitled to require that from him because he should be giving me that. You know, and we're seeing a lot of that over social media. We're seeing men being seen as pound signs, and this is it's visible. I mean, it's blatantly obvious,
and it's okay.
It's not okay.
That's what it's
not
almost
okay.
like. It's okay.
It's not okay. I mean, how can a woman who believes that she is all powerful then require a man to pay the best, give her diamonds?
There's no balance in it.
There's no balance in that narrative. And what these women are doing is making themselves look fools.
On the bright side, it's not every woman that wants to be a feminist, you know, but the majority right now wants to, you know, have their own life. Don't want to be with anyone else. Want to earn more than men. Want to do, and the thing is, men are not even complaining. If you want to do it, do it. Do you know what I mean? If you want to start walking on the road as an engineer and fixing the road, do it. We're happy to see people like that. But it's almost like, I'm sorry to say, and it's almost going to sound controversial. It's like they're fighting a war that don't even exist.
No, I know. And this is why I think men should focus on their own identity. And I think they should understand who they are as men. We're seeing a lot of men standing up now. You know, they say, I'm a man. I mean, this is a dad, right? If you're a dad or somebody's a dad out there, what is not publicized is there are 2 10-year studies that have been held for men, okay? Now, as soon as a man becomes a dad, one of the American studies showed that as soon as a man becomes a dad, his testosterone level drops. He will never regain that. It never goes back up. It changes the structure of his brain, okay? It actively changes. So this thing where women's bodies changes and all of that, it's not that puts some entitlement. Well, my body changed, therefore I'm more important to my child. You know, there's a lot of that. I'm a woman. I remember feeling like that on my first child. My God, I've gone through all this and I've got this baby and, you know, I'm very connected and feeling quite, you know, separating my husband from that, thinking he didn't understand or he didn't experience these changes, when in actual fact he did, you know. So there's an area in your brain that changes. Now, in this testing that they did, they carried out these studies for 10 years. The one showed that there was only one area of difference between a man and a woman in terms of caring for their children, understanding their needs, providing for their needs, and that was in protection. Okay, so men's had a heightened area of protection. Women, in the other study, it showed that if a man is not present in his children's lives, those children will not build resilience, because the most important thing that a man brings to his family and his children is resilience, which is why there are more children. If you've got a single mum family, your children are more likely to go into prison, more likely to drop out of education, more likely to have teenage pregnancies, more likely to take drugs, more likely to be homeless when dad's not in place. So I spend my time building men's confidence and saying, you need to do this. And on the other side of me, I've just started saying to ladies, come on, you got this wrong. You've bought into something that is not true. You've been lied to. So step back a minute and have a look at what is the truth. Just spend 10 minutes, dive into the research, have a little look. Ask your brother, how does it feel to be a man now in the world? Ask your father, ask your uncle, you know. Go and speak to your best mate and say to him, how does it feel to be in the world? And for goodness sake, guys, give the right answer. Tell them the truth. Wake them up, you know, because they don't know. They genuinely don't know. So,
Thank you so much, Sally. This has been so amazing. I don't know, we could go on and on and on, but we have to just, it's been so inspiring. I've learned a lot, and I believe both men and women will pick something out of this if they want to be truthful to themselves. And this is what the podcast is all about, having this safe conversation and brave conversations right here on Talk To Ake. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can subscribe to the channel for more of this. I must say I'm really, really excited, and I want to watch this over and over again, Sally. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is Talk To Ake. My name is Ake. Cheers.